We're going to call the meeting to order. My name is Susan. I am the chair of the Monroe County Women's Commission. This commission shall serve as an advisory role to assist residents, businesses, and the government of Monroe County in addressing issues of gender equity in all aspects of society. Our mission is to advance the status of women in all areas of county life and to champion women's contributions to local culture and society. I know everybody had a chance to look over the agenda. Do we have a motion to pass the agenda?
Motion to pass the agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The approval of agenda passes. And everyone has a copy of the minutes and looked those over from last month. Do I have a motion to pass the approval of minutes?
I had just a couple edits because there were some misspellings, but it's just yeah. So there's suggested edits in there. Did you see that, or is that okay? I don't know if that's the way to do it.
That's fine.
She's so good.
Yes, with her amendment.
Motion to approve with edits.
Do I have a second?
Oh, second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Awesome. Minutes pass. We'll make sure the edits are corrected before they get sent to the commissioners. As far as updates, I don't really have any this month for some reason. I do want to say, I know we had someone that Commissioner Thomas interviewed to join our committee. I thought it was supposed to be approved, but I don't know where it is. But I know she met with Kathleen, so there's that. I also did have another person apply, and they told her it was full, which technically it is. I would like to recommend to everybody again that we still want to recruit people. I'm gonna say, and I say this because we do want us to increase our capacity and more minds better, but I would like to say that the person that I recently recruited that actually applied, she was young, a young professional at IU, and I was talking to her about it, and she was like, I don't know if I'm qualified or whatever. And I was like, all I need you to do is have passion and interest, in the thing, and then the rest will come. And that I was like, it's interesting to me in the last year since I've taken on a whole bunch of stuff, but realizing how little of a commitment that all these things can take. I said, all you need to be able to think about committing is 5 to 8 hours a month, at, the most, to these kind of, boards or committees, obviously more, but whatever. So I think I would like, as we talked about months ago, for many people to apply to be on this committee, to try to whatever, so we can hopefully up our numbers. So I really recommend everybody to keep recruiting. And I think it is really important to pass that message along that you don't have to be an expert at anything. You just have to have an interest, and that we will all sit here and learn together as we have. I didn't write it on here, but I forgot. I did talk to Angie about our name tags, and she was supposed to bring it up with the commissioners. I reminded her again, and she was supposed to bring it up I don't know if she talked to them about it on Wednesday or not, but that is really all I have, I think. And I'm gonna pass it off to Maria.
All I have is happy Asian American Pacific Islander Month and happy Mental Health Awareness Month, and may we normalize both of those things. Thank you.
Oh, way down there, sorry. Okay, so on to old and ongoing business. Our meeting report, and I'll tell Nikki that they need to be, one of them needs to be extended into June and July. I did add them to the bottom of the agenda, as you can see. I think it's really helpful. We talked about this last time. I actually added it to the agenda of another meeting that I'm on, which I really like. So there's that. Please remember to sign up. Oh yeah, and the name tags. So for the county council meeting report. Nikki, Susan, Maria, did you go to the one this week?
Well,
Was it this week?
we need to talk about briefly if we need to attend the county council, because when Tiana and I met with Molly and Angie, Molly was like, that's, they're the fiscal body, so all they're doing is passing all this, saying all these numbers and passing budgets and, things like that. So she didn't feel like it. I mean, clearly she's not going to advise against it, but she was just like, for the best use of your time, it may not be the best use.
I mean, and I'm okay with whatever. I mean, I'm going to try to go when I want, if they meet, once a month, so it's not that, because I do think I sat through one whenever it was, and I couldn't believe how long it was, but, it's still interesting,
Sure.
and I know
Yeah.
Jeff would be supportive of us. I still don't think, maybe we don't have to watch every week. I still think we need to go and speak sometime and let people know maybe when, girls coding comes on, to, whatever. But I do think that is something. So, I mean, I'm open
That's
to whatever.
Fine. Yeah.
Hitting 3 is, a lot already for all of us. But, I mean, we can talk about that when everybody comes back in the future, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And I don't have a dog in that fight. I just, if it's something that we don't have to do, then, you know what I mean?
I think, so one of the things that I think might be helpful in that is at least, reading their agendas. Maybe not go, but yeah, everyone, you sign up to at least read it and skim it for us, be the eyes. Is there anything interesting, that we need to know about? Because those meetings are hours and hours and hours long. But I think skimming the agenda is a great thing, so at least we still have an idea of what's going on.
That's fine. And maybe we can commit to going or attending either in person or Zoom once a quarter or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did attend via Zoom the county commissioners on Wednesday, and I was like 3 minutes late, but I didn't hear anything about name tags, so I'm not sure.
I didn't see it on
I don't
the agenda
think that,
either.
Angie brought that up, so. I don't have a whole bunch, to report from that meeting. I wonder if I should bring this up now or not.
What part?
Well, this just came up, and so I didn't tell you about it. But it was in the paper that there's concerns around the health department. There are 8 employees that left, 10.
Do you want to wait till new business?
I don't think there's anything we need to do. Just be aware of it.
Oh,
and that falls in the county commission.
Yeah, and they got a new officer too.
Yeah. So we can just briefly discuss it, I guess.
Okay.
If needed. I don't know. I just want people to be aware of it more than anything.
Yeah, their turnover has been crazy. Okay, so we can talk, and the commissioners, I haven't heard anything. Julie, I know, you're coming up on one. But I haven't really heard a whole lot about any of it in the council. I honestly, so for the Bloomington Commission on the Status of Women, I swear I went to the last one. And then I was trying to find my notes as I was writing the agenda, and I was like, I don't know if they even had one, because it was like 2 days after the election last year. If they had one, I don't remember it. I remember the one from the month before, but that was it. So, but I'm signed up to go to the one that's coming up in a couple weeks, and I'm probably going to try to go in person. I would like to start meeting them again. So, I don't know. That's all. And then Girls Coding Camp subcommittee. I know you guys met twice, or you guys met with them, with Angie and Molly. And then you guys had your subcommittee meeting that morning or the morning before, or whatever it was. So I don't know if you wants to report out on what's going on there.
Okay, so these are Julie. Just so we know, is like the note taker of the world. I know. I thought I was good, but she's way better. But anyway, Tiana, Julie, and I met with Angie Purdy and Molly Turner King. I can't remember what day it was, but it was a really good meeting. To be honest, it provided a lot of clarity. I don't think things are as difficult as we thought they were going to be. They're going to work on the MOUs. We identified who needed them. A lot of IU's insurance and liability stuff covers their people, and when we have students at Luddy, so I don't. It was just a really good meeting, and I don't think that there's anything that we need to be concerned about. One thing that they suggested is that Angie would help us. Did she call it? Some sort of fund that. Let's see. Hold on.
Julie's like, I write good notes, but I don't remember anything.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was some sort of fund for the Monroe County Women's Commission. So we're not a fundraising body, but if we would get any funds or whatnot, then we can. And then our budgeted funds would go into there too. So the invoicing and all of that business for vendors will not be a problem like it was last year. So they should be able, because my vendor didn't get paid until months after the fact. And I know Luddy didn't get paid for a while also, but that was because nothing was established, right? No, there was no process. So we have that now.
Yeah, they had a misunderstanding. Angie and Molly talked about that. They had a misunderstanding last year about whose program it was, so they weren't clear that the Women's Commission was the one that was paying the vendors, like that was how it was supposed to happen. They were thinking it was happening elsewhere, so that's why it took so long to figure all that out and get people paid. I think is what I'm recalling.
Yeah.
But now they know, so they can set up the fund that they need to be able to respond to any vendor invoicing, and it's not going to be as confusing this year.
Yeah. And we're not clear why there was so much confusion, but I think it's something that we need to keep an eye on, just for the record.
So where are we? Like, what are next steps do we have?
So next steps are the MOUs. So Molly's working on those. Tiana's working on what needs to be done for Luddy. Let's see. They were Molly was even going to rewrite the resolution for the program so it's clearer, because what the resolution on file for girls coding does not reflect what it actually is. So this is all getting a refresh. We even talked about budget for after this resolution is over. I think it's this year or next year that we probably will not have a problem renewing it, but we have to bring that before the commissioners. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Or the council? No, I don't know.
The commissioners.
So I wish Tiana was here, because I do, and I'll bring it up again at another time, but I didn't know. I have one of the young women I know that work at IU that's in Luddy or whatever. She was telling me the other day she had got her internship, and she was super excited because her job working with Girls Who Code Camp. And I was like, huh, what? And I forget, I think it's high school kids. But there are 2 other girls coding camps that I didn't know about that existed. So, and I'm okay if this is, the project that, we want to continue on, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but and I know, like, I think the ones that she was telling about, they're different ages. One's elementary school, that's high school, and we're
middle school.
So,
yeah.
It does fill a spot, but like, it's something that and maybe Tiana knows more about it because she's at the school, that just as something to, because I'm not against it, obviously, in any way, but if it is not the best use of our time or money, that if somebody else is going to pay for something and take it on, and that's fine. We could find a million other things to do.
Yeah.
Or to coordinate with who, people that are doing it, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Whatever. So I didn't know those things existed, and I just thought I would bring that up.
Yeah, since we do have notes from both of those meetings, the meeting that we had as a subgroup, and then the notes, and then meeting with Molly and Angie, is that something that we want to connect up? They're from Dropbox, or I don't know how that works with the minutes. Is that a good? Is that what we do?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, I will do that.
What are you thinking about?
No, I agree that we shouldn't double do anything, but if we are fulfilling or filling in a gap, for those middle school girls, I think we should look at that. But I think we should be clear about what other programs are going on for next year, and then just revisit timing, need, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But there is, I think, some it's unclear in the Luddy school. People are getting confused because one of the, I don't know what the terms are and for people in their positions, but one of the people that work there is doing the girls coding camp or girls who code camp. And then Tiana has us, which is girls coding camp.
Oh, so maybe that's where RBB got confused. Okay.
Yes, that is exactly where RBV got confused.
Okay.
One word missing.
All right. Well, when everybody's back, we can keep talking. And obviously, we're not going to do anything this year. And to keep it moving and as is, and it's fine. And now that we're all in a little bit more in the light of everything that's going on, I think it'll be easier for us to, have a better opinion about it all. I know I'm going to close the door on that unless anybody else wants to put anything in. We have our gender equity and justice response subcommittee. I know there's been some stuff because the commissioners shut down the thing. And so, that obviously doesn't mean anything to us because we can still do whatever, all the things that we're interested in. I know we talked about a whole bunch of other stuff, but I do know we need a subcommittee meeting and we need to do some things with that. So
Yeah, who is on the subcommittee? Do we have?
we have that. It
I
was
can't
from the work session minutes, and it was, I think it was work session. We talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's me. I thought it was you.
I'm should be
You
on
and
it,
definitely
I think
Julie.
it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what that means for us. Us getting together, having coffee, and really trying to think about well, I'm interested to hear about what happened at the coalition meeting and then see that.
Yeah, that's another set of documents that we've got now. There's I tried to summarize everything that I'd been looking at, which includes minutes from the minutes that I took from those two community justice meetings that I attended. So there's one that was hosted by Care Not Cages on May 1st at the public library. And then there was another one that just happened on Monday that was hosted by the Monroe County NAACP. And at the May 1st Care Not Cages hosted meeting, they were basically like, we know this other meeting is already scheduled by the NAACP, so why don't we continue the conversation we started at this meeting, at that meeting? So they're connected. And they're connected that way because a lot of the same people were at both meetings discussing community justice and what does that look like. So, and from the report, which I guess is another thing I should link up in the minutes from the Dropbox, there were several community organizations that were represented. So New Leaf, New Life, UU Church, Hope for Prisoners, which I think is the UU Church organization. I'm blanking on the others, but there were a variety of community organizations that were represented. And the sheriff, I think, was in attendance at both as well, to help answer questions that anyone had. And the focus was really on how to, in the community, what can be done to reduce the need to incarcerate people, period. So in that way, reducing the need for jail facilities. So that's kind of the general discussion. And then how do they put, how does a coalition, or how do these community organizations separately, in combination, I'm not exactly sure, how do they pressure county government officials to support those efforts with policies from the county commissioner side and funding from the county council side. So that's kind of what they're talking about. So in some ways, they don't really care what happens with the jail. Like, that's kind of, the jail's they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do with the jail, but what we need to figure out in the community is how to reduce the need for jail facilities, period. So that's kind of where that is going. But it's also, those meetings are happening because the CJRC meetings are not happening. You know, that's how they all started up. So yeah. And then what I'm doing, trying to bring into this, and I think what the subgroup can look at and figure out what to focus on, is how women and women identifying folks fit in with all of this, whether it's the community justice side or the jail facility side. And I think there's things I've been looking at in the report, the 2020 report on the jail, that, you know, what it talks about and what it doesn't talk about. And for women and women identifying inmates. And there's also a little bit in one of the surveys that the health department survey that happened, which I think happened at the beginning of this year. So, but just very, very little at this point, actually. So figuring out if there's something that we as the Women's Commission can provide input on, or our own voice, bringing those issues in both areas, the community justice meetings that are happening, as well as whatever is going to be considered next with the jail facilities. So.
And I urge everyone, and I guess we can post these publicly if needed, but Julie did an excellent report on the report of the from the community justice meeting, or the report that they were using. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did air quotes. But yeah, and the Care Not Cages meeting. But the main things that I pulled out from your report is that the jail is not equipped for females. As you said, there's not a lot of information, so people aren't even like looking or like thinking about, you know, female inmates. And then there's, according to Julie's report, there's very little detail and support for women or women identifying inmates. And it literally says they cannot, I think it says that they literally cannot support non-binary, transgender, multigender inmates. Yeah, it's not even they're not even addressed in the report. So that's problematic.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think we need to consider is that this is a report from 2020 that was looking at the jail facilities from 2003 to 2018. So, and there are changes, and it's different now with a different administration and a different sheriff, but we don't know what the differences are, and we don't know what the differences are for female inmates. So I think there's potentially some new stats that we want to see if we can get. I don't know how easy it is to get at that. There's some of that discussion in the community justice meetings as well, about how do you get data. Like, it's public data, but it's very difficult to come by and aggregate. So
obviously we can talk about, and we should talk about this at a subcommittee meeting, but I mean, are some of the thoughts, that you have from going to this and reading this is like, obviously we want to assess what's going on, but also acquiring information about what's going on in other places and how they're handling certain, I don't even know. I'm sure the data is probably really rough, and, just trying to figure out what other facilities are doing, or other communities, how they're handling, especially, non-binary or in jails and such. So, I don't know. That would be something too to look at.
Julie did make some suggestions for this commission. which I really liked. Request data from jail on current female inmate population. Request data from jail on non-binary, transgender, and multigender inmate population. Request tour or presentation on jail specifically about services for female inmates and non-binary, transgender, and multigender inmates, and provide a report to the county commissioners and county council regarding current status of female, non-binary, transgender, and multigender inmate population. I think, and for me, I feel like we should do all of these and then provide a report and then and do some research and then provide, maybe some recommendations, because that's what we're supposed to do in this commission. And then, we've contributed, we've looked at this, we've brought it, to people's attention. And since we have a subcommittee already established, it seems natural that that would be something that we would do.
No, I love that.
Julie's awesome.
I know Julie is awesome.
The other thing that I saw in the report was the mention of Vigo County going through this similar situation, and then our proposed contractor for a new jail is the same one. So I know it was just a little blurb, but I'm curious as to how much was talked about.
That was something that was brought up in the community justice meeting that happened on Monday. That was mentioned, and I think I was able to link to it's DLZ's the company, and they actually have the Vigo County project as a link on their site with all sorts of details about the study that they did, and then the proposal that they created, and then the fact that they ended up being the ones that were contracted to do that work. So it is kind of interesting how that all happens, and DLZ is essentially, I think, if I'm correct, I think it's the commissioners have made the decision to use DLZ for the new jail facility. I don't know, I think, I'm not sure. I think it's a decision that's been made.
So maybe I would be happy to divulge time to look into that. That was like a thing that stuck out to me, that
it stuck out to me too, and it was kind of sort of said in passing, but I was like, wait, what? And then looking at the site, it's a pattern, I guess, that people are suspecting is something that's happening, where a certain construction contractor designer is doing this in the state.
Yeah, I think that, that is a point of contention right now, or was, because there was like who responded to the RFP, or who, how were these people chosen, that sort of thing. But I kind of feel like that's not in our purview, and we shouldn't get distracted by that, because people already know about that, people are already addressing that. But I haven't heard a whole bunch about, females in our LGBTQ plus inmates, and a lot, if at all.
I like the focus.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, focus is going to be important. We can't conquer it all, as much as we'd like to. Does anybody have anything else to say about any of that? Or any other new business that they would like to comment before we?
Yeah, just real quick, just because it was actually, I wanted to bring this to the health department situation just so we know about it. But then when I was reading Julie's reports, one of the bullet points in here says that, she's not saying this, but it was discussed at the meeting that the county health department hasn't had a good relationship with the jail. And so if we're talking about female and those that identify as health care, I think we should at least just keep an eye. Now, similar to the DLZ thing, I don't think we need to do anything, but we need to keep an eye, because if the health department, I feel like if they're failing, well, I'm not gonna say, if they're struggling, then care of the inmates or relationship with the jail, I may or may not be on the radar for the moment.
So is it the health department, or the public health, and I know the public health clinic is I don't know who provides healthcare to the jail, to be honest.
I mean, it could be Health Net.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't know what the relationship between the health department and the jail is, but we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, they didn't really get into details about what the health department does with the jail, like what sort of things are supposed to happen between the two.
Surely.
But it was just mentioned that there were issues between the health department and the jail, and the sheriff responded that they're trying to repair that. Essentially, they're trying to meet with them and get back in touch. But I don't quite know what the services are that the health department provides specifically. So
awesome.
Yeah. But this was in the Herald Times, written by Boris Ladwig. So I don't know. I mean, he's just reporting out, and he interviewed people that have been let go and what they said. So I don't know. There's always turnover when there's new leadership, but in our health department, like in the article, institutional knowledge is huge, I think, especially since they got us through COVID, we're not super through, but they guided us well, I felt.
Oh,
during
yeah,
that
Penny
time.
did a great job.
So anyway, that's all.
And a well-deserved retirement for her.
Yes.
I think one last thing with the gender equity and justice response, which would kind of be new business, is if we've got membership listed for that subgroup, is it something to call a group meeting together for that, get something scheduled to discuss? Okay. Yep.
Wait, our subcommittee?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Right.
Yeah. Anything else? Do you want to introduce Mary?
Oh no, I should have had a bio and everything. But anyway, this is Mary Morgan with she's the executive director of the Heading Home program, and she's amazing. Everybody loves her. But anyway, we had some questions, and just we were thinking about how we're so new in this commission, but we want to be very intentional and we want to do things. And so you just heard us talk about, one of the hot topics and that we're going to look at, as far as females go. And I think another topic that we talked about was females and homelessness. And then somebody also brought up thinking about elderly females and homelessness. Now, I didn't ask you to, get any information on that, but it did just spark this conversation. And I was like, oh, I know the perfect person to come and talk to us about homelessness and females with that are, housing insecurity. And of course, I'm kind of aware of it because domestic violence is one of the, precipitors for a lot of females to become homeless. So if you could just educate us, and then maybe how we can help.
Sounds good. I prepared a slide presentation, which now in this context seems like overkill, but I'm gonna go through it anyway. And I think you have the slides up there. Yes, great. Okay, fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I know Maria and love her and feel like this is a great fit for her, and I'm glad to meet the rest of you. Good to see you again. So I'm just going to get into it, but I have a very informal style. So if at any point you want to just ask a question, please do just interrupt me. I'll pause every once in a while, and then we can take it from there. Next slide, please. This is just kind of an overview of the kinds of things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give you some background about Heading Home, a look at some of our key projects. and then get to what I think you would be concerned about is some of the specific impact on women experiencing housing insecurity, and then what the commission might be able to do to address that. Next slide, please. I was looking at all of my photos through the lens of the participation of women. And going back to, this is a photo from the press release and press conference when Heading Home was announced as a program back in late 2021. And women leadership dominates. Heading Home was conceived of through a collaboration from the Community Foundation and the United Way of Monroe County, and those were both women-led organizations at the time, of course with participation from the city and county. So it was the culmination of a year-long effort, and I don't know if any of you were involved in that working group that led to the creation of the Heading Home Plan. There were about 100 people in the community, and at that time I was with the Chamber of Commerce, and I participated through that. But really it was, the focus was to develop a strategic plan that would give us some long-term guidance to strengthen housing security in Monroe County, but also in this region, because as you know, we don't operate in isolation. And it was, the development of that plan coincided with the availability of federal ARPA dollars at both the county and city level. And so they recognized that this was a need to address sort of systemic issues related to homelessness and housing insecurity. And so they both donated or granted some funds to start Heading Home and enable us to hire two full-time staff to implement the strategic plan. And I think, you know, you all have experienced that if you're doing something on a volunteer basis, it's extremely hard. It's hard to get people to show up. It's hard to, you know, get things implemented and take action. And so really it was a game changer, I think, in this community to make a commitment to hiring staff that were actually going to implement the plan. Next slide, please. And that's me. And my colleague Tatiana Wheeler, who sends her regrets. She couldn't be here tonight. She had another commitment. But the two of us are the full-time staff. I was hired in late 2021. She came on board in early 2022. So this is all very new, right? So we are trying to figure it out as we go. And I feel really glad that, again, we have women in leadership positions. And I think that reflects the strength in our community to really make opportunities for women. And then, you know, the overall vision is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-repeating. And again, we're not a crisis response group. We do not provide direct services. We are looking at the long-term systemic regional changes. Next slide, please. Oh, we can just go right through that. This is some of our education efforts. Next slide. We make presentations all over the place. So if anybody's watching, or if you have any other groups that you'd like us to reach out to, we're really trying to have conversations that let the community know what the issues are, know what's being done already, and know how people can support that work. So we've been doing that in many different venues, and I feel like the more people know, the more engaged they can be, and the more we can overcome some of the stigma that homelessness engenders. Next slide, please. One of the charges of Heading Home is to identify gaps in the system and ways that we can fill those gaps that any particular agency that's providing direct services can't. So the Heading Home Guide is one of those projects. We provide, we had contracted out with Deborah Meyerson of Meyerson Consulting to really just do an online resource for, primarily we're starting out in Monroe County, but we've done some information for the other counties that we cover. We're committed to updating it regularly, which is another thing that's challenging. You can put something out there, but if nobody has ownership of it, it just kind of lags. So our fantastic interns will be doing that twice a year. And it's a way for people to more easily find housing resources in this area. Next slide, please. We were a partner with the Kelly Institute for Social Impact this year. It's a case competition, so student teams would get together and address a challenge that we posed, and our challenge to them was develop an anti-stigma campaign that we could deploy in multiple counties. So we are now working with them. This is the winning team that's pictured here, and one of the proposals includes a focus on the Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week during November. So we're planning a series of engagement initiatives and ways to kind of educate the public about homelessness, housing insecurity, and how they can help. And so that's a really great partnership. And I will say that they are always looking for community partners. They do it once a year. And I would say that it's a great opportunity because you do receive, unlike some other student projects, you receive $10,000 as the organization to implement the student team ideas. Next slide, please. Okay, we can move on. Some of our outreach efforts, again, I mentioned this is a regional effort. One of the things that we found as we've done outreach in other counties is that some of the elected officials and decision makers don't necessarily want to acknowledge that there's a situation in their community. And so we convened a group in Lawrence County last fall, and some of the community leaders were like, well, is it really a problem here? Are people coming from other communities? And we don't really think it's, so we said, okay, we acknowledge that you don't believe necessarily that housing insecurity, homelessness is a challenge in your community. So we're working with IU Professor Laura Littlepage to do some research this summer with her graduate students. And our goal is to present a report in the fall that basically outlines the situation there, and then make some recommendations about what the county leadership can do, county, town, and townships. I feel like rural homelessness is often more hidden, that people are not necessarily on the streets as they might be in more urban areas, but they're living in their cars, or they're living, couch surfing, or they're living in what we would consider uninhabitable places, trailers. That somebody told me that there was a trailer that had actually slid down part of a ravine and didn't have any electricity or running water and had leaks, but somebody was living there. So so that's just an issue that needs to be talked about and highlighted in all of the communities. Next slide, please. We're also doing landlord outreach in different ways. One of the challenges for our community, and really this is a challenge across the nation, is that there's just not enough housing units available. Occupancy, the last data that I checked in Monroe County was 98%, which means, 2% more or less vacancies. And so it's just, landlords have choices. They're not scrounging for tenants. So we are working in partnership with the Bloomington Housing Authority. We've done some landlord recruitment videos that we're going to be rolling out soon. We've helped fund their risk mitigation program, which is a kind of an insurance policy for landlords that if they accept a family or individual that's using a housing voucher and something happens negative, that maybe there's damages beyond the damage deposit, or somebody skips out on rent, that there's a fund available that those landlords can tap to offset those costs that they incur. Hopefully a way to encourage more people to be landlords for Section 8 housing
Mary,
vouchers.
what was that landlord outreach called again?
The Risk Mitigation Fund.
Risk mitigation.
Yeah, Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund. And it's a City of Bloomington Housing Authority program they received funding from the city, which meant that they could only apply that to landlords who were within city limits. So our funding, because we have funding from the county, we're able to say, okay, we'll supplement your funding with ours for specifically outside of the city of Bloomington limits. So, and it's a very new program. It was just launched a couple of months ago. So we have hopes for it, but it's just still kind of very new. And then we're creating a task force. We haven't done this yet, but we're working to do this. Excuse me. There are many different agencies that are doing their own landlord outreach. Middleway, I'm sure, has its own set of landlords. We feel like it would be more effective to collaborate and coordinate and strategize about how we can all recruit more landlords. And honestly, part of it too is to support the landlords that are doing good work, because we don't often celebrate the fact that there are landlords out there who take a risk or who are just willing to forego maximizing their profits, right? To rent to people who are maybe not able to pay the top dollar. So we hope that that's going to result in getting access to more units. Next slide, please. And then I wanted to talk about a national organization that we're involved with called Built for Zero. Next slide, please. So Built for Zero works with over 100 communities nationwide, and we are the first community in Indiana to be part of their network. And it is a fantastic opportunity for us. They provide coaching, they provide tools and guidance and connection with other communities that we can learn from. So we have a small core group that's working here locally. We meet regularly with our coaches. Our priority initially is to really get our data under control, because right now we're close, but we had different agencies using a couple of different databases, and we weren't connecting, and so it was hard to get a clear picture of who was homeless, but also what services people were providing and how they were being connected. Just as an example, if one agency is working to get somebody's Social Security information and birth certificate, that takes a lot of work. Well, if the person ends up going to a different agency and then there's somebody there that's doing the same work, they're just wasting time, you know. So that's an example of, if we can get everybody sort of knowing where people are in the system, we can save some resources. And so these are just some pictures of our core team locally. We have membership from HealthNet, from Beacon. We have Representative, she's Executive Director for New Hope for Families, Emily Pike, but she's actually on our team because she's chair of the South Central Housing Network. And she's really been, you know, fantastic in helping get us to this point. And then Danielle Sorden, who also works at Beacon, is our coordinated entry lead for this region, and she's on our team as well. And then we have a representative from Wellspring, which is a family shelter in Martinsville. So getting at that regional approach. And then this is just a little sort of our journey to getting quality data. We've been reporting monthly to Built for Zero coaches. The data kind of goes like this, because we're discovering kind of things that are gaps in our database that we need to improve, and so that changes the numbers a little bit. So we're not making this public yet, but our goal is very soon, hopefully in the next month or so, to publish a public dashboard that will give monthly updates on where we stand in terms of the number of people who are homeless, how long it's taken to move from someone who's homeless and move them into housing, and other metrics. One of the things that we've done related to data is a pilot project specifically focused on veterans. We've implemented a veteran case conferencing approach, which is basically getting all of the different agencies in the room, along with resources from the Veterans Association, from the Housing and Urban Development. Steve Miller, who's a county Veterans Affairs Director, comes and basically get in the same room and problem solve for each individual. We can do that with veterans because there aren't, relatively speaking, that many. I think there are 10 or 11 currently. But since January from this approach, we've housed 15 veterans have moved into housing through this approach, which is fantastic. And the goal is to more quickly move someone into housing. And when you have everybody around the table who can problem solve and can say, oh, I know that person, I can do this for them. I provide this resource. It's really powerful. And it also feels like as a case manager, you're not alone. Like you've got the back, everybody's got your back. So that's fantastic. Next slide. And I think, oh yeah, this is the group. It's not all because it's a hybrid meeting and we have people Zooming in, but meets every other week. And it's really, I feel hopeful about this process that we're trying, because I think we can then expand it to other subcategories of people who are experiencing homelessness. One of the things that we're learning from Built for Zero is that if you try to tackle everybody all at once, it's kind of overwhelming. There is coordinated entry that's still happening, but if we can, in addition to that, focus on veterans, maybe focus on seniors, maybe focus on families and youth, we'll get those incremental gains that'll be really powerful. Next slide, please. And then I'm just gonna go quickly through this. Next slide. We have different advocacy efforts underway. If you're interested in supporting any of them, you would be welcome. We did some educational efforts related to the elections, had a candidate forum for the mayors, had a learning session for council candidates. We provide logistical support to the South Central Housing Network Advocacy Committee, which meets monthly and tries to draw attention to local, state, and federal issues. And then we have an initiative actually very similar to, I think, what you're doing in terms of trying to coordinate public commentary so that the issues are raised for housing. So we are soliciting people to just go to the county council, county board of commissioners, City of Bloomington Council on a regular basis. And we're not really telling people what to talk about, but we're saying from your perspective, what are some of the personal stories or data you can provide for housing insecurity in this area? Because we feel like a lot of times we don't engage our elected officials except when we want something or there's a crisis. And I feel like it's kind of like rock on the water. If you just show up, different people show up and like, here's my perspective, here's the work that I do, and here's how the city could help, or just even not even make an ask, but just raise their awareness of things that are happening. So that's something that I think could be effective. We're still getting it off the ground, but just trying to engage more people. Next slide, please. Okay, and again, some of the other things we do, just quickly, cross-agency training. One of the things that we can provide that any single agency can't necessarily, or that it's more powerful if we do it as a community, is to provide some training for frontline workers. And so we're doing, we have a committee, we are providing training quarterly. Our next training is June 1st, and it's for frontline workers. It's tools for housing-centered case management. And we usually get around 30. We think we're gonna get 30 to 40 people show up this time. And I will say that one of the things that we feel is a value not just the training itself, but just giving people a forum who are working in this space to get to know each other and get to support each other and build that network of, solidarity, to know that you're not alone. Because honestly, the frontline workers, I don't know how they do it. It's other people's trauma that traumatizes you, and it's just very challenging.
Is this, you said you've done trainings already like
Yep.
this?
Yep.
What agencies are people coming from?
They're coming from Beacon, Wheeler, New Hope,
Okay, cool.
HealthNet. We've had people coming from BPD and the fire department who have social workers. We've had people coming from the Bedford shelter and the Wellspring shelter in Martinsville. So, yeah.
And I've been seeing that advertised, and I'm going to push it towards our case managers at Middleway House, because we were just talking about the timeline in shelter, right? And so they actually had to extend the timeline in shelter to 12 weeks from 8 weeks, which is kind of the recommended best practices or whatnot. But due to all the steps that they have to take to secure housing, from getting identification for them and their children,
Right.
which is huge, to then finding a Section 8 landlord or someone who and so I think that, hopefully some Middleway House people will attend, because I
Yeah.
think that's really good.
Yeah, and
Thank
for
you.
this training, it's free lunch, so. It's from noon to 1:30, so we felt like we needed to feed people. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's the one. So that's what I just talked about. And let's just move on. One of the things that I'm really proud of, this was Tatiana's idea, and when she suggested, I was like, okay, but it's really been powerful. It's a series of articles we're doing on people who do this frontline work. And you can see here, this is a very female-heavy group of people. And these are all from the different agencies. So we have Beacon, we have Carrie Stillions, the Middleway House Executive Director, New Hope for Families. Centerstone is another one I forgot to mention. We have New Leaf, New Life. We have Tanda Radawan from the Eviction Prevention Program, people from Bloomington Housing Authority, HealthNet, et cetera. So this is just a way that we're trying to raise awareness in the community that there are a lot of people doing this kind of work, and it's important to support them because we need them, and we need them not to burn out. And so that's just an example of one of the projects.
Where is this on your website? Or do you have it? Are you pushing it out on social media?
So we have yes and yes. We have a news section of our website where these stories and others are published. We have a newsletter that comes out once a month, specifically focused on these articles. So we kind of do a roundup for the month, and then we push them out on social media. Yeah, and we encourage, and depending on how they feel about being promoted, that we encourage them to sort of share and make sure that other people know. And so it's been really we've gotten good feedback on that. Next slide. Next slide. And these are just, again, I just mentioned these. We have 3 newsletters now. One is for general information about work that's being done. So we talk about what other agencies are doing, what we're doing, any kind of interesting federal news or state news related to housing security. That's the first week of the month. Then we have the People of Housing Security newsletter in the second week. And then our newest newsletter, which just went out this week for the first time, focuses on volunteer and advocacy opportunities, because we had gotten a lot of feedback from people in the general public that really want to help, really want to have something to do. And so we started out putting all those volunteer efforts in our regular newsletter and quickly discovered that there was so much available that it really deserved its own newsletter. So that's that. And then social media, we're on Instagram and Facebook, and we publish regularly on our news site on the Heading Home website, which is headinghomeindiana.org. Okay, this is why I'm here. Just wanted to give you some information specifically focused on challenges that women experience and what y'all might be able to do about it. I'm a little bit sheepish about this because my guess is that you know all this already. This is, and especially you, Maria, because you're working very directly with families and women. And so these are just some of the examples of common challenges. Period poverty is a big thing. We don't, as a society, like to talk about the cost of menstrual products, and we all need them, and it's just something that is a reality, and it's kind of shocking that in this day and age to me that this is not something that's just like, okay, we need to do this. This is a need that we all have, that women all have. And so this research that almost 2/3 of women in the U.S. with low income can't afford menstrual products, and I can't even imagine having to decide between, food for your children and menstrual products. Just seems crazy to me, but that's the reality. Lack of prenatal support is another big challenge, and that has an impact on children as they grow through their whole life. So that's something that I think we could do better on in this community. And if you are homeless and pregnant, all of the risks that you face as a homeless person are just magnified. We do have now, I will say, HealthNet, which is a relatively new player in town. They came in about 1.5 years ago and do street medicine. They've been a game changer. They go out to encampments. They have, I think they have office hours with Middle Way now, and Wheeler Mission, and I think they're getting some with Beacon too. So that's been helpful because they can provide a lot of support, medical support for women who are pregnant. And then, of course, sexual violence. It's just a reality that women are more vulnerable if they are unsheltered. And you, Maria, you said this earlier, that sexual violence often does lead to homelessness and substandard housing. So that's another issue, but there are instances that if you're a woman, you're vulnerable to being taken advantage of in shelters and on the street and in encampments and through sex trafficking, which is just a reality, and that is more of a challenge, much more of a challenge for women than for men, obviously. So, next slide, please. My colleague Tatiana put this together. These are just some examples of things you can do. They're pretty simplistic. Oh, okay, can you advance the slides for me to next one? Great, thank you. Periodic hygiene drives, period, and hygiene drives periodically. Shelters would welcome that for their residents. I think having, you talked about doing more research for another topic earlier in this meeting. I think doing more research specifically on the experiences of pregnant women experiencing homelessness. We don't really have a lot of data on that at this point. At least I'm not aware of data. I'm sure it exists. And we thought, well, maybe partnering with the Bloomington Commission on the Status of Children and Youth might be something to kind of maximize the effort for that. As I do think working city and county together is very powerful whenever that's possible. And then just raising awareness of these issues as you are doing already. So this is a little bit redundant, but I think that our leadership in the community and then anyone who watches these meetings, because it's surprising to me, but there have been times I make presentations and somebody says, hey, I saw you on CATS. And I'm like, really? So I think that there is power in that, not only to the decision makers, but also to the general public whenever possible. And then next slide, please. We do serious work, but we like to have fun. And so, you know, as a team of women and young women, pictured here is Tatiana and our two interns. I think that we are striving to be change makers in a really challenging field, and so we have to support ourselves and each other in ways that kind of get us through this work. And I think that's just sort of a foundational belief that I have too. So that hopefully reflects our ethos generally. And we would love to partner. We are open to partnerships. We feel like anything we do needs to be grounded in partnership and collaboration. Sometimes it takes longer than doing it yourself, but I think ultimately it's more powerful to do it that way. So if there's ever anything that you think you would like to do or we could partner on, we would be open to that. So that's my presentation. And I would love to have
I have so many questions.
Okay. Oh, and I am supposed to tell you, this is an important piece. I told Tatiana, I'll remember it. You don't need to put it on the slide. I had her do a search for the data of the percentage of women who are experiencing homelessness. And again, I always, at this point, I'm still like, our data is, you know, I'm not rock solid about it yet, but for the database that we have, 40%, about 40% are women out of the roughly a little over 350, I believe, total population. Don't quote me on that because I think that might be an old number, but.
And this is for the data that you're gathering for the Monroe County area and the region?
It is. It's the entire region, although most of the comes from Monroe County because we have the most services and the biggest population. And a lot of times people come here, not a lot of times, but people who are in counties that don't have services will come to Bloomington and Monroe County. So, yeah, I don't know if that was one of your questions,
Nope.
but I wanted to mention it.
No. So tell me about, because I really don't know, and I wish I did, but I don't, about the creation of this program. So is it a model from somewhere else? Did you create your own model? Are there other things? I mean, it's like sitting here and it's like, I'm sure you feel this same way. You're like, duh, I can't believe we haven't been doing this all this time, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously this is, I mean, to me, it's brilliant, right? And, you know, someone that can oversee, that's what we try to do too, is like, it's so similar. Like when I was listening to you, like just the mission and the, you know, the objectives of, you know, providing, you know, a bird's eye view of the problem and being able to pull people together and, you know, to help create, because everyone does, we live in our silos and just trying to bridge, you know, pull all that because somebody needs to. So I'm just curious about where the model came from and if there is anybody else doing that is really my first question.
Yeah. So I was involved in helping update the Heading Home plan, but I was not part of the discussion of the decision to hire staff and to hire us to implement the plan. So I'm not 100% of the origin story there. I know there are other communities that have models like this, and I will say that Indianapolis is the example that I always cite. I don't know if the people who made the decision to create Heading Home also knew about Indianapolis at the time, but they have an organization, the acronym is CHIP, and I wish I could tell you off the top of my head what that stood for. But I often say that we are a little baby and CHIP is a mature adult.
Yeah.
Because they have done things in Indianapolis that we, I think, can aspire to do. One example of that is I've mentioned coordinated entry a few times. I'm not sure if I know you do, if you know what that is. So basically, it is a process similar to the case conferencing I mentioned for veterans, but when a case manager encounters somebody who's experiencing homelessness, they have a assessment that they do to assess vulnerability. It's a long list of questions. It's an interview type survey. Those then are given a score based on your vulnerability. And through coordinated entry, it is a way to try to elevate the most vulnerable and put them at the top of the list and put them into housing quicker, because ultimately we're trying to prevent people from dying. I mean, that is, and so if you've been chronically homeless for years, have a variety of medical conditions, physical or mental, substance use or what have you, you'll be rated higher in vulnerability, and so you'll be more likely to get into permanent supportive housing. Anyway, right now, the person that I mentioned from our Built for Zero team, who is working at Beacon, is also the coordinated entry lead for this region. So we feel like that is a logistical role we could play at some point, and the model of CHIP in Indianapolis, they're the coordinated entry lead. So that's not a direct service, that's more of a kind of a logistical support thing. And then that would alleviate some of the stress on the person who's doing it now, who does a great job and also has, her other work to do, her full-time job. So that's an example of a thing that this CHIP organization in Indianapolis does. They also do database management, which I think is a crucial role for an organization like ours to play. So right now, Tatiana is within our team, the person who's done a lot of help database support to move us towards having a more comprehensive set of data to make decisions with. So, yeah, I think that this is not unique, nor is it common. So I feel really proud of this community for stepping up. I think that the biggest challenge is just finding funding for this kind of work, because it's not a capital expense, it's not direct services, it is kind of an other type organization that we're mounting. And I think it's an important one, but I don't know that it's always recognized as a need.
So I can say for the recording that CHIP stands for the Coalition for Homelessness Intervention and Prevention.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would have guessed the H, but I wasn't sure about the others.
Yeah, I had a question about the funding model that Heading Home has at this point. So there's a strategic plan and there's funding to achieve that strategic plan. Is that just like for a certain amount of time?
Yeah.
And then it's like, you don't know what happens then?
Yeah, we would love to know. So this is the deal right now. Because of the ARPA source, the federal source, there is a timeline on that. And those dollars, we're told, need to be expended by the end of 2026. So that gives us, a fair amount of time, but not forever. So the original idea was to use part of those funds to seed an endowment that would throw off enough to support the 2 staff people. so we wouldn't have to worry about the staff funding, but then we would have to go to get grants for the programmatic piece of it. There is now some question about whether ARPA dollars can be used for an endowment, so we're working through that. It might be that the fundraising needs to happen for the endowment separately from ARPA dollars. And those dollars were originally county dollars. So we don't have that yet, but we're still trying to figure out if there's a way we can address that. And then the Community Foundation had committed to raising, I think their goal was $4 million total, and the seed funding was $1.2 million. So there's still some fundraising to do. But I feel, so then there are other sources. So part of the benefit of being part of Built for Zero is that they have a foundation where you can access funds for specific projects or programs or individuals. They received a $100 million MacArthur Foundation grant a couple of years ago to do this work, and the majority of that funding is going to be granted out to its member associations. So as a community that's participating in it, we have access to that. We're still trying to figure out what would be the best ask at this point from them, and we might not tap those funds until it's closer to our other funding running out. But that's another thing. And then I think we just have that timeline through 2026 to prove our value, right? Because if we kind of coast along and aren't doing anything that's deemed valuable, why would there's no point, right? It's why I wouldn't want to be part of that kind of an organization, frankly. But if we can prove value and we become so valuable that people can't imagine what it would be like without the things that we do, then I think it'll be easy to make a case to raise some money. But I also tell you that it's challenging now because every agency who's doing this direct services needs funding. And so I am very reluctant to do fundraising in an environment where it seems like we're competitive with the folks who are doing that work. So that's just my own 2 cents.
I'm seeing so many, like, I feel like what you're doing with Heading Home is a similar sort of thing that this coalition that's looking at community justice, similar sort of thing, like all these organizations, are they duplicating efforts? How are we serving the population that we're trying to serve? And, you know, how can we help improve things for that population? It's like, it's kind of,
Yeah.
It's a very parallel sort of thing, but you're like, I don't know, probably years ahead of
Not years.
what this group is talking about right now.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And I feel like there's probably a lot of connection there too.
Yeah, I
somehow,
think so too. Yeah. And I think, you know, organizations like New Life, they're doing fantastic work. You know, with limited resources too, like everybody else. I feel like that one of the most challenging things for us, because housing and homelessness is such an issue, right? It's like everything, it touches everything, and people are talking about it. And so one of the challenges that I found is that there will be these little pop-up groups that are form in order to address homelessness or in order to address low-income housing. And so I have been surprised sometimes. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize we should connect. But I think that shows that there's such passion around these issues. And I suspect the same is true for the criminal justice work. So just trying to like open your arms and say, come on in, let's talk to each other, right? So if you're trying to do something that we're already doing, maybe we can share that information and work, you know?
Do you feel like, and you don't have to answer this, I guess, but I mean, because like what you said, do you, with funding and being, I mean, there is some, do you feel like some of the silo is based on the people feeling competitive, even though maybe they're not direct competition in the way?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Sure.
because that's like, you know, because everyone's after dollars.
Right.
And so, because I mean, that's how we all survive, right?
Right?
So in the sense of getting two direct service providers together, even though they're providing different services, still feel like they're competing, because in some sense they are, for the same dollar.
Sure.
However, there's, by combining
Yeah.
forces, they're still, I don't know, supporting themselves in a way. Do you feel like that's some of the issue with getting people together, has prevented it in the past?
I think you can't underestimate the impact of scarcity of resources. And so, of course, if you're working in an organization and you believe in what you're doing and you think that your organization is doing better than other organizations, you're gonna like have that competitive nature, especially if you see some other organizations getting funded and you're not. So I think that the environment we have just in general for nonprofits creates that dynamic a little bit. So you're kind of trying to distinguish yourself from other organizations as you're like soliciting funds from small pots of money. That said, I think that there's a lot of great collaboration with the organizations who've been doing this work for, you know, a long time. Like, I guess when my previous comment was directed towards, you know, sometimes faith-based groups will create a homelessness task force, or sometimes, you know, they'll just be random things like that. I think the organizations who are doing this work day in and day out generally want to collaborate, see the value in it, show up, volunteer for, I mean, we have a lot of committees. We're asking people to work on these things. And I will say that almost 100% of the time that I ask if somebody can do something, they say yes. And so that speaks so well for our community, because all of the people involved in frontline services want to address this problem in the way that, like, houses people, gets people off the street. And so, you know, sometimes things get a little weird because of that competitive piece, but generally I think it's just a great group of people.
Awesome. Why are you making a face?
No, this is just my face, Susan. I thought you had a lot of questions. That was just two. That's why I was looking at you.
Oh, well, I have lots of questions about.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I have
but
a
no, I'm good.
comment. I have a
No.
comment that is connected to what you guys were talking about. I think it's a great model, and I think
Oh my gosh.
I'm wondering if like the criminal justice, you know, kind of looked at that, and it's a model that makes sense, right? It's, I mean, you know, and for me, I'm sitting over here thinking, I mean, I'm not like a great economist at all, but you know, if we work together, we're not double doing services. We're you know, working in a you know, a system that's accessible, and there should be enough resources for everyone. And that's what I talk about in my organization, is operating from a position of abundance, right? And that's like kind of, I don't know, that's kind of a catchphrase now, but I think it's really a mindset, you know. And if we, and I think it's great that Heading Home, when Mary started talking about this, when she was starting to take the job, you know, getting everyone around the table, like, why not? Like, why not? You know, and I mean, I think that's true for collaboration, you know, is key for, dare I say, everything. I mean, you know, and sharing knowledge and sharing resources. And so I think you know, I thought it was a really exciting, I still think it's a really exciting project. And just another comment, I'd like us as a commission to, you know, decide if this is something, you know, that we want to focus on, you know, housing insecurity. And if so, I think it would make sense, especially given what Mary said about rural homelessness, since we're county commission. I have a feeling that most people think about Seminary Park and what People's Park used to be, and you know, those sorts of things, and they don't think about the rural, right? And I didn't think about the rural either, and I had the opportunity to come into contact with three individuals that they weren't, they were experiencing housing insecurity because their house did not have electricity. So they didn't have a refrigerator or a stove or anything like that. But they were so thankful that they had running water and a roof over their head. And they would walk into town, and that would take them 3 hours. And one of them was in a wheelchair and blind. It sounds like, I'm making that up perhaps, but no. That was the reality. But they were so thankful to have what they had is the thing. And so again, I just think if we're the county, so if we can bring awareness to county issues, which again, I don't think people think a whole bunch about county housing insecurity.
And I think for rental housing, since there's not a rental inspection program in the county outside of the city limits, that's another challenge because landlords are.
What? I never thought of that before.
Yeah, yeah. So, so that's a challenge. And I will also say, yes, you're the county, but the county includes the city of Bloomington.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I kind of feel like you got it all, right? If you.
Wait, what? Why do we not? It's so interesting. Anyway,
It's-
sorry, I never thought about it before.
Yep.
Because they have hand. Why? It's hand. the city has hand, right?
The city has hand.
So why does the county not have hand? Something like hand.
Well, the argument that I've heard is that it would be expensive to mount up a program like that. And I've also heard the argument that it could add to the cost of housing, that landlords would pass through costs to the tenants if they had to fix things up. So I'm going to leave it there. But I do believe that having an inspection program would be great, or empowering an organization like the Monroe Fire District, if they come across a dilapidated home or a situation that is, I was told about this situation where a man was in an apartment and he called for a 911 response, and they went in and it was a hoarding situation. I don't remember if he didn't have electricity, but as the EMTs were trying to treat this person, that there were just like mice running over them. And those kinds of situations, like the situation you described, you feel like, well, that couldn't happen in our community, and it does. And we just don't learn about it because people also are not going to broadcast that kind of living condition, right? So you're not going to talk about it. It's there's stigma associated with it. Anyway, yep, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that's frustrating is it would be expensive to create the program, but we're paying for it in other ways. So you're
Yes.
talking about preventative measures. That's our problem, is we're a very reactionary society. So we don't want to be preventative about those things. And so it's just dumb, because we are paying for it one way or another.
This is a similar conversation to the community justice meetings where they're saying how the cost to incarcerate someone, we're paying for this if we're not putting forth money and effort beforehand to prevent people from being incarcerated in the first place. So
Because you
similar sort of
can't-
thing, yeah.
You can't I always get those mixed up. You can't quantitatively show that you're preventing things. Like how.
It doesn't happen if you do.
Yeah, you can't say, oh, we've prevented 10, because how can you prove that?
I
But
think,
we have a fire department. I don't know.
yeah, I think there are like you can from a perspective of homelessness. You can look at ER visits and the cost of transporting somebody to the ER because they've been vulnerable because they've been outside and they haven't gotten medical treatment and those kinds of things. So you can make a economic argument for some things, but you're right. It's just more challenging to prove a negative.
Well, and then, I mean, we all know that as much as we've taken mental health issues mainstream, we're in our culture, just even discussing those things, we're not even, you're talking about preventative measures as getting people mental health care that we need. And,
Yeah.
is Richmond Hospital still exist? I always thought the only state hospital we had, anyway.
Yeah, well,
so,
and we haven't gotten to this point overnight. So this has been decisions that have been made over decades, like closing down our state hospitals, which were awful, but, it kind of went to the opposite extreme. So instead of fixing and improving what we had, we just got rid of everything. And now we see the results of that. And so we can't fix it overnight either, right? One of the challenges that I encounter is people want, you wanted these people. and you're not going to, these are systemic issues that are very complicated, and you're not gonna address them by removing people from the site or there's no
so what I hear you
magic.
saying is make sure you vote.
Well, yes, of course.
Well, we're at 7:03 right now, and I
know.
just want to be respectful. I mean, we could talk about this forever, I'm sure, because it's just such an intersect. I mean, so many things can lead to housing insecurity, which leads to people just trying to survive and perhaps committing a small crime. And so it's a whole situation that we could spend forever talking about. But thank you so much for coming
Sure.
and explaining
Oh.
the program to us and to bring some action items.
Yeah,
that
you
we
heard
can-
her mention period poverty. Remember whose passion project that was?
Yeah.
What did you do? Oh, I can talk
No,
about
I
it.
didn't do anything, but it is my thing, and because I think it's ridiculous, it's an issue. It's ludicrous, and I feel like that is something we could solve somehow. Like it just seems like a little thing that we could fix because it should be a non-issue to begin with. But I don't know, silly.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very happy to meet you. It's wonderful, and that presentation was wonderful. And hopefully people out there will watch us sometime or another.
Yep.
We're trying to build our brand here.
We're
is what
trying to,
doing.
yeah.
We're-
Thank you so much, Mary. I
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time, and
Thank you
it's
all.
after
Good to
hours.
see
And
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody's even on, but
Do
if
we,
have public comment, then
oh,
we
yeah.
have public comment, and then, no public comment. If anybody would like to have the meeting or call to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn?
do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Yay, all in favor say aye. Bye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.